Okay, great everybody. Good to have Steve Sudworth back with us.
Thanks, Teeks.
Just was thinking about all the nicknames that you've had over the years. Sludge bucket, sludgy. Have there been more since then? Or?
No, actually, those ones have just stuck. Yeah. Thanks to you. Thanks to you. Your enduring influence in my life.
We all have to do what we can.
We
all have to do what we're best at. You know what I mean? But it is great to have you back.
Thanks.
And I want this to be a little bit more of a casual chat for us this morning or afternoon, whatever it is. But I think, and I mean, just coming out of this last 15 months, 18 months, whatever it has been, it's felt like there's probably been more change and more to deal with over this last, whatever that time period is, 15 months, 18 months, than there normally is in like a 5-year period.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It just felt like stuff came at us. I want you to comment. I know for us, and I've said this before, I think on the podcast, but it felt like no matter what I did, I offended somebody. You know what I'm saying? It's like I couldn't be conservative enough for some people, and I couldn't be liberal enough for some people. Not that that's what I was trying to do.
Sure.
Trying to hold the center line of the Word of God.
Sure.
Trying to lead as best I can under God. Then the political upheaval, then COVID. You know what I'm saying? And it was just like the hits kept coming. And trying to navigate through that. Like I say, it couldn't be this for that. Then masks came, and then there was the debate about masks and no masks. And people left again on both sides of that argument, And so, I mean, what I'm hoping to do here, and again, we haven't set this up as a pastor's podcast. We're not trying to train pastors here. We're trying to give insight, I think, to believers everywhere. And I don't know how far we'll get, or even if we will get anywhere with it. But the conversation that I want to have is, well, what do we want to tell believers? What do we want to tell people in the pew? Not that we have pews in, but you know what I'm saying. What do we want to tell people in the pews? Yeah. About how we wrestled with some of those things, and how we made those decisions, and you know what I'm saying, without trying to be this way or that way or whatever. We were just, and yet we had people leave. And I don't even know if that was a similar experience for you.
Yeah, that was the same experience. Yeah.
But maybe just like a casual chat, just some comments, and let's just talk. Well, what do we want people in the church to know?
Yeah.
Because I don't think sometimes, we'll make a decision in an elders meeting, and then we come and go, hey, this is, and we try and explain it, etc. But I don't think people understand the wrestle and the weight of that. You know what I mean? On an eldership team or on a lead guy. So make some comments. But
a worthy conversation. I think and a necessary conversation. So I mean, you said this is going to be a chat and an opportunity just to be real and honest, and I think this is true for everyone, but I can say this has definitely been true for me. The last 12 plus months have been probably the hardest I've ever. No, I want it to be near the hardest I've ever walked through. We've had some personal challenges in our family, which have obviously kind of supersede that. But I don't think I've fully understood the burden, and with that burden comes grace. But the burden, nonetheless, of the last kind of 15 months or so. And for us as a church, I mean, I think what you describe, your experience has been very much our experience. And so perhaps if, for what people need to know is that as an eldership team, your pastors are carrying the weight of responsibility to honor God with every decision, and to care for the people entrusted to them, and to find the balance in that, because it's assumed that those are the same thing, but that's not always the case. And obviously we want to honor God before we want to do anything else. But that at times comes at a cost. And that cost weighs heavily on us. It's weighed heavily on me. I've found, as we've come out of COVID, as we've come out of the political wranglings that we've gone through, as we finding our way back to whatever normal is, and I think even that has to be redefined. I've felt the weight. I really have. In it, though, I mean, as I said, there is grace. I'm a firm believer in the sovereignty of God, and a firm believer in God is with us in every challenge and every trial, brilliant. And that God has not forsaken us, and God has not left us. And a passage of scripture that has been really helpful for me is 2 Corinthians 12, where Paul says 3 times he cried out to the Lord to remove the thorn in his side. And that's obviously what we've done, not Lord, remove the thorn, but Lord, why are we going through this? Lord, what is going on? What are you doing through this? And what Paul says next, I think, is often the bit that's forgotten. It says, but the Lord said.
Yeah.
And I think before we get to what the Lord said, just that truth, but the Lord said.
Yeah.
And I think the question we've got to ask ourselves is, through this time, what has the Lord said? That's where life is found. That's where the grace is responding to what the Lord has said to you, to me, to whoever. But then Paul goes on to say, the Lord said to him, my power is made perfect in weakness.
Very good.
And I think if anything for me, and I'm sure it's true for most of us, if the last 15 months has taught us anything, it's taught me my weakness. It's exposed our weakness. It's exposed my weakness. However, that promise is the power of the Almighty God is perfected in our weakness. Yeah. Just think about that. I mean, that's just, that for me is mind-blowing. Like, I'm having a moment even as I'm saying that. Like, the power of the Almighty God is made perfect in the midst of our weakness. And that's what the last 12 plus months has taught me, is my weakness and my absolute dependence on Him. So through the challenge, through the trial, through the struggle that we've all gone through, and I'm not elevating ours above anyone else's, there is definitely God's grace to carry us through it all. Yeah.
I think, I mean, for me, when it's like I don't think people understand the weight of ministry, and I don't think you ever would. And to be honest, I don't even think some of our elders on our teams understand it, unless you that guy, unless you are the guy that's called, privileged to be leading the team at that time. I'm sure the guys do carry burdens, but it's just, I think, and I mean, you and I both have a business background, and I think the way that I've always explained it is this: it's like, if you lose a deal for 10 grand, you go sign another deal the next day for 100 grand, and you're like, yes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But when somebody leaves the church, hurt, disappointed, whatever it is, justified, unjustified, you grieve for that family or that person that's left.
Yeah.
But you can have 10 people join the church the next weekend. You're still grieving for that person that's left.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so it's different to business, where you can have wins and losses.
Yeah.
That just doesn't exist when you have the heart of a shepherd, when you really deeply care for people.
So true.
It's like every one of those things is a weight on you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And like I said, justified or unjustified.
Yeah.
We've made the decisions, as you said, our best decision under God. And I don't know if this is true for you, but it certainly is for me. It's like we pray, we seek God, seek the Word of God, and we make the decision. And as we're making that decision, I know there are going to be people disappointed with me. But I've made my best decision under God.
Yeah. No, so true. And I mean, even on our eldership teams, our respective eldership teams, I mean, those conversations are not always easy. I think sometimes it's assumed that what we want for the church is always done, always happens.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily true if we understand that we are trusting to see Jesus build His church, first off. And secondly, the fact that we lead in team.
Yeah.
So it's not always a case of coming with what I want to do and just getting everyone else's thumbs up.
Yeah, rubber stamp.
Exactly. And so there are times when elders come into a meeting and leave disappointed because what they wanted to see happen doesn't happen. And so that's not just unique for people in the church.
Yeah.
We all go through that.
Yeah.
Lead guys as well. There are times when we have to say, all right, that thing that I was really passionate about, I need to lay that down for the sake of the team, for the sake of the church, for the sake of Jesus building his church. And so, all that to say is there are wrestles, there are wrangles, there are challenges, there are moments of relational challenge on an eldership team as well. By the grace of God, by the goodness of God, we are committed to working that through and not allowing those differences to take us away from what God has called us to. But there are difficult seasons nonetheless. And I think, the last 15 months or so has caused some of those things to come to the surface for us to navigate as an eldership team, for us to navigate as a church. It's difficult to know even what do we go after, what do we comment on, even that question alone. We've been asking as an eldership team, what do we add voice to, what do we comment on from the pulpit, because that commenting from the pulpit is a statement, not commenting from the pulpit is a statement just the same. So, what things do we comment on? There's news every day. Are we just going to allow the news cycle to determine what we're saying? Or are we going to trust to pick up on the Spirit? But there is a time when the news cycle demands that we say something, when it's appropriate for us to speak into the culture that is happening. And this is not a pull out your kind of like 5-point checklist. All right, run through those. Great, we know the answer.
Exactly.
This is really discerning what the Spirit of God is doing. What is Jesus wanting from us as those entrusted to lead his church?
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. I'm a huge MMA fan. I watch all the fights, and there's a guy that I watch. He's actually from here at Colorado. Went to school at the same school the boys go to, and he made this statement a little while ago. He said, "I've got 5 wars left in me." And then he had 3 fights. But they were quick fights for him, like quick knockouts or quick endings to the fights, And so in a post-fight interview, they asked him this, and they said, "So you got 2 more fights left?" And he said, "No, I said 5 wars. Those weren't wars."
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it was
Good.
interesting because when I think about the past 15 months, it's felt like that. It's felt like this sustained attack against the church, against leadership, against saying something or not saying something.
Yeah.
It's like, how did we get there? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And like I said, you can't be on either side of that thing. Not that we were ever trying to be.
No.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think without being overly dramatic, and I'm sure they'll censor me or edit me out if this does come across as overly dramatic. I'm far closer to the end of my ministry than I am to the beginning.
Yeah.
Just simple math.
The grey beard gives it away.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Simple math. You know what I mean? And I think that thing of those wars is interesting because I've looked at, and we had a rough year the year before, just with elders and sickness and etc. And I feel like I've had 2 years of war. You know what I mean? And to be honest with you, I've wondered in the context of that thing, the burden that we carry, the weight that we carry in making some of these decisions as best we can under God, and yet still seeing the fallout from them. You know what I'm saying? I've wondered if that is actually, you know what I mean? Taken something out of me. That's what that guy was saying. It's like, I've got 5 wars. I don't want to be battered around the head for the rest of my life. That's what he's saying. You know what I mean? But then with the quick wins, that didn't cost me anything. But these 2 years have cost something. And for everybody out there, I would love people in the church, whatever church you're in, to know this past year has cost your pastor something.
I don't think I've actually ever. No, I don't. I must be careful. I think I've said it. I'm sure I've said it, but I don't say it often to our church. The need for the church, our church, to pray for their pastors, and I think I don't say it enough because the Bible calls for that to happen, And, in order not to make it about us, and in order not to, to put yourself on stage, you tend to steer away from those kinds of texts.
Yeah.
But I would wholeheartedly agree with you. The church needs to know the challenge of the last 15 months and the importance. That's why it's in Hebrews, for example, and other scriptures. You need to pray for those who are over you in the Lord. It's been a particularly challenging season to navigate all of that in the hopes of honoring Jesus and seeing his bride continue to flourish despite the challenges. Yeah.
And I mean that the relational thing, I felt like has always carried us. You know what I'm saying? It really has. We build relationally. It's one of our values.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? We build relationally, and it's one of the things that I can't. When I think about myself, I think, man, you are a very wealthy man. I'm not talking about material things. I'm talking about the depth of relationships that I've carried with people like yourself, Andrew, etc. for 20 plus years. You know what I mean? And thinking about this the other day, 20 years is a short relationship for me now, because we've been in America for 20 years. So people I've only known since I immigrated to America, I've known for 20 years.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And yet it felt like, in this time, and not that it should, but in this time, even that didn't hold people together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We had one couple, we literally had dinner with them, and just before the whole, and then never saw them again. Won't respond to texts, won't answer our calls.
Yeah.
Had another lady walked through her with some dramatic things. You know what I'm saying? Walked her down the aisle for her wedding. And get a one-line text, a one-line email. Sorry, please take me off the community list. I'm no longer part of Redemption City Church. And you're like,
what the?
can we have a coffee? Can we talk about this? You know what I mean? And then it's like, you know what I'm saying? And so we've spoken about this a little bit before on the podcast, just about, like, we all get that Jesus is the common ground. We should. We should. You know what I'm saying? And so if I'm gonna show up and go, okay, well, I'm not sure I'm down with the virgin birth anymore, then you're like, okay, we're just probably gonna have a conversation with that, because that might be a fork in the road for us. You know what I'm saying? Or like, gee, we don't believe Jesus paid the full price for it. We're gonna have to have a conversation about that. Maybe Jesus was the half son of God. I don't know. We're gonna have to have a conversation about that. That should be the common ground. But some of these things, and I get that they are reality in people's lives, but they, in the light of those things, these things feel peripheral.
Absolutely.
And they especially peripheral if you won't even answer my call or my text to say, let's talk about it. Do you understand what I'm saying? And so again, that's just that. It feels like a cost. And we get that. There's a price and a privileged leadership. We get that. Gee, but I want people to know this hasn't been an easy season to be a leader. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to just share that. I heard a preacher that I listened to quite a bit use the analogy of things written in blood, things written in ink, and things written in pencil. And he talks about the things written in blood are those irrefutable truths. Those truths, like you mentioned, the virgin birth, Jesus the Son of God. The Bible is the inerrant word of God. If we are differing on those, it's not a case of that's fine, we're still followers. No. That's Christianity. You are not following you are not a follower of Jesus if you believe if you don't believe that he is the Son of God.
You're starting a whole new religion.
Exactly. But there are things written in pen and things written in pencil that and I think sometimes we've not just elevated pencil truths to pen truths, we've actually elevated pencil truths to blood truths. And I think that's where a lot of this is happening. And for me, Romans 14 is such a worthy text, this idea of, and I know Paul is speaking about food and what have you, food sacrificed to idols, what's appropriate to eat or not. But the whole idea is considering your brother or sister. And I think we've lost our way because we've stopped considering our brother and sister. We've stopped thinking the implications of others who may hold different truths. And at the end of the day, we've set aside unity, we've set aside love. I mean, Paul Jesus, in fact, defines the law as love God, love your neighbor as yourself.
Exactly.
And we've very conveniently put that aside and started to divide over things which, according to Romans 14, are not worthy of dividing
division.
over.
Yeah, exactly.
We can hold to our convictions. Absolutely. No one's saying we all need to believe the same thing about some of those pencil truths.
Yeah.
But when we've elevated them to blood truths, as it
Yeah.
were, that's when we start to disregard what Romans 14 teaches, what Jesus teaches when he says, love God, love your neighbor as yourself.
Absolutely.
And that's when it gets a little disappointing, you know. Just going back to something you said earlier about the heartache, you know, I remember someone saying to me once, someone on our eldership team, they said, stop taking this so personally when people leave the church, you know, don't take this so personally. I mean, I didn't actually have words to say.
Good advice. Impossible to live out.
Exactly.
Thanks a lot.
Because it is, I mean, it is, like you said, we build relationally. We deeply care for those who join the church. And it's heartbreaking to see them, even when they go for good reasons. Even when someone gets a job transfer and it's clearly God, or someone's planting a church and it's clearly God, even that's heartbreaking and painful. Yeah. And I mean, I'm not sure of the numbers for you, but we've probably, I would say, lost maybe a third of our church over the last 15 months who've either moved out of the city. Cities are typically challenging to live in at the best of times, and when you throw in, you know, the political turmoil and the protests and COVID, you know, people have moved on. Others have left the church for other reasons, but probably a third of the church have moved on, you know, and it's been heartbreaking. It's been heartbreaking to see those relationships. I had someone here one day text me tomorrow they're in a different state. Like, you know, wow, you know, that happened real quick. And that wasn't just one story. There were a number of stories like that. So anyway,
They start checking in on Facebook at a church down the street. And you're
exactly.
But I mean, honestly, the challenge with that is, like I say, it's like, does friendship count for nothing anymore? You know what I mean? And it's like, you can have legitimate or illegitimate reasons to leave, to move on. I get that. But shouldn't we have a conversation about it?
Yeah.
Do you know, if there's a relationship?
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
But I think that's part of, and this is always where I get into trouble, because listen, there are some things going on in our day that we should be outraged about. You know what I'm saying? But the level of outrage, and sometimes it's, I don't want to say fake outrage, but like I want to say, just like, take a deep breath, but being outraged is not a life skill. You know what I'm saying? But it's like, and I get that. But if you're outraged by something and I'm not, or I'm not engaged at the same level that you're not, in our day and age, that feels like a fork in the road. Do you know what I'm saying? Rather than, and I mean, we've spoken about it before on the podcast. It's like, where is that common ground? Where is that place where people can have a conversation and disagree and walk out the room still loving each other, still believing in each other, still partnering together? You know, this year I've been married for 30 years. If you think Sandy and I agree on everything, you're deeply confused. And yet we're still together, still partnering, still raising kids, still counting for the kingdom. We don't agree on everything. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, but there feels like there's something that's come where there's something that's been ushered into this nation where we feel like the smallest disagreement gives us the right to slam our Bibles, walk out, never to return, never to answer a text. It's like, you're dead to me. It's like, how did we get there? And like I said, I want to qualify that, there are some things, you know what I'm saying, that are important to us. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, it feels like we've lost this thing of being able to have robust conversations, disagree, and still be like, okay, well, actually and I want to say this, I think in the context of the ministry, you know, in terms of the pain and the weight that we carry, that's why this thing has to be a call, not a career choice. You know what I mean? You have to know you're called of God. Because in the tough times, you're like, well, God called me. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
This was never a choice I made.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be.
Yeah.
This was never a choice I made.
Yeah. Yeah.
God called me and I responded to the call of God.
Yeah.
And until God says I'm done with you,
Yeah.
then actually this is what I do.
Yeah. Yeah. Our friend, you know, James and Jess, they were on eldership with us in Chicago, and as you know, they moved to New York, and they moved to New York to plant a church, and they moved.
Geez, that's a giant to take on. Eh?
It's a giant to take on, and unknowingly they moved a couple months before COVID, and they went through understandably a challenging time. I mean, James has work history in the restaurant industry, so his plan before COVID was to move to New York, get a job in the restaurant industry, and kind of find his feet from there. And obviously that
restaurants all shut down.
Exactly. So I was on the phone with him a couple weeks ago, and I asked him the question. I was like, James, do you ever regret the timing? Do you ever regret moving? And he said not at all. He said he was spending time with the Lord, and he was asking, just working things through with the Lord, and he realized that he would never have moved had COVID hit while he was still in Chicago.
Yeah.
He would never have moved to New York because because Chicago was safe ground.
Yeah.
And so I say all that to say, God was with James through all of that. God knew all that was coming, and the timing was still in God, but it was a challenging season, and we can't dismiss the fact that even in the very will of God, we go through incredibly difficult times.
No, exactly.
And people who come to me and say, why am I, is it God's will that I suffer? And I say to them, well, Jesus was in the very center of God's will and had to die a gruesome death on the cross.
Absolutely.
Do you think he was outside of God's will? The will of God sometimes takes us through some very challenging, dark times.
No, exactly.
But even though I walk through the valley of the shadow, you are always with me.
Yeah.
God will never leave us. God will never forsake us. And as we both said, despite the challenge of the last 15 months, we know it then. We knew it then, and we look back and see it.
Yeah.
God was always with us. God was always with us and will always be with us. Going forward. These are times I think we need to learn to express and lament and cry out to God. We need to know how to express sorrow and sadness and difficulty.
Is that different from outrage?
And there's a place for outrage, but appropriate, focused. but in that we, in the midst of expressing sorrow and sadness, the Psalms particularly, they call us to express that with praise, with worship, with acknowledging that God is with us, with acknowledging that God will come through for us in the end. And I think sometimes we can, we express the outrage, we express the frustration, we express the anger, if I can be so bold as to say, because we're not convinced of God bringing us through to the end. Yeah. And so it's a bit of a panicked response. If we are settled in the fact that we know God's going to bring us through, I think our outrage would be tempered somewhat.
Well, no, honestly, but I think that's part of my challenge. And I mean, this is not a secret to anybody. I've preached this on a Sunday. We work within a fallen, broken, fallible system. You know what I'm saying? And we keep. It's like the Tower of Babel. We're trying to find ourselves to God or to a God ideal without God. And then we're surprised every 4 years that it didn't work.
So,
do you know what I'm saying?
So true.
And we saw that in this last election. I mean, people absolutely lost their minds. I mean, did you think Jesus needed help from the White House?
Yeah.
Do you think Jesus loses or gains power depending on who's sitting behind the desk?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, listen, social media has been a different animal completely, you know what I mean? But it's like, honestly, some of my comments I've wanted to say, have you given up on the Lord?
Yeah.
Have you given up on the gospel?
Yeah.
Because it seems like you've put all your eggs in one basket, and as believers, I'm not sure that's where our eggs should be.
Yeah.
Yeah, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
so I think there's been some of that thing. And then if you don't agree with that, well, I mean, I was accused on both sides of those things, you know what I mean? But So it's just, you know what I'm saying? That's
Yeah.
that's I think been part of the challenge. It's like, gee, do we still believe in the gospel? Do we still believe in the centrality of Christ?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Do we still believe He's the hope for this nation?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or are we going down some other road?
Yeah.
Do you know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? And then, like I say, every 4 years we're surprised that doesn't work. And
Yeah.
it's like, we look into the people that got us in this mess to get us
Yeah.
out of this mess.
Yeah.
It's like, man,
Yeah.
friends,
Yeah. Yeah.
believers,
Yeah.
brothers,
Yeah.
can we look to Christ again
Yeah.
as the hope of this nation?
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean? No
Absolutely.
matter what that thing is, whether
Yeah.
it's about the racial issue, whether it's about the political issue,
Yeah.
whether it's about the COVID issue, are we looking to Christ?
So good.
You know what I'm saying? Because
So
if we are, then we should be able to have robust conversations
Yeah.
and not end up hating each other or thinking each other's a jerk or whatever
Yeah.
it is. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
If we come back to that thing,
Yeah.
you know, it sounds so simplistic. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like, what's the answer? Jesus.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I'm not in the third grade. What's the answer? The answer is still Jesus.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
absolutely.
For me, 35 years of,
Yeah.
30 years of ministry, 30 years of marriage, 30 years of ministry. What's the answer? The answer is the centrality of Christ.
Yeah.
Let's look to Christ.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Otherwise, we are lost.
Absolutely.
And if we look into politicians, forgive me if you're a politician or a lawyer, but if we look into politicians and lawyers to get
Yeah.
us out of this mess, they're the ones that got us in this mess.
Yeah.
Let's start looking to Christ.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And that's, I mean, that's the challenge that Jesus puts before us as well. You know, who do you say I am?
Yeah,
Who
brilliant.
do you say I am?
Brilliant.
Not the world. Who do you?
Yeah.
Who do you say I am? Is the question that is before us. You know, and I think I like what you said about. Well, it's hard, but you know, getting it from both sides is probably better than getting it just from one side, because then you're probably finding some sort of centralist view, which you know you're keeping your eyes on Jesus most likely, and you're getting it from both angles. Man, it's you know it's yeah. I would say
I was called some words I had to look up. I'm just being honest with you.
yeah, I can believe that. Yeah.
I can't even look up what that word means.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned there's so much I want to say. I mean, you mentioned
Go for
social
it.
media. You
Go for
mentioned
it.
emails.
Yeah.
I mean, just to say, like it's heartbreaking reading those emails. It's
Yeah.
challenging reading those social media posts.
Yeah.
You know, if I can say, I mean, we have feelings too. You know, you read those things and it's hard. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking.
It really
it really is. And then just one other comment to what you said, you know, are we keeping our eyes on Jesus? I feel for too long the church in America generally has in some ways abdicated our responsibility to a political party, you know?
100%.
And I just think that's so dangerous.
We're definitely getting cancelled.
We've got to look at ourselves in the mirror and we say, like, what are we doing about the social issues? Not what is the government doing? What are we doing about the social issues?
That's Ephesians 3:10, right?
Exactly.
Now, through the church,
Yes.
God's manifest wisdom,
Yes.
manifold.
Yes. Yeah.
God has wisdom on every single thing
Absolutely.
that we would wrestle with, whether that's race or
Absolutely.
poverty
Yeah.
or women not getting equal power, whatever it
Yeah,
is,
yeah.
there's a manifest,
Yeah.
many-faceted
Amen.
wisdom in God that needs to come
Cannot
through
agree
the
with
church
you
in
more.
our day.
Cannot agree with you
And we need to
anymore.
stop playing patty cakes, though. That's the problem, and
Exactly.
start declaring some of
Yeah.
these truths.
And our responsibility, honestly, is not just to put a check mark next to a name and say we've done our bit.
Absolutely.
No, but what on the ground in Westminster, in Chicago, what is Anthem Church? What is Redemption City Church doing to impact the sphere of influence entrusted to us?
Yeah.
And we've got not just leave it up to the government, whether that's
exactly.
state level or local level or federal level, but what are we doing to answer those questions that our culture, society are asking, and that puts the responsibility back on us, you know. So.
But and I want to just clarify that thing, and then we do need to close. But I want to clarify that thing a little bit. Like when we say taking the responsibility back on us, that's not on the pastors. That's on every member of every church.
Absolutely, yes.
You know what
absolutely.
I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's like,
The saints
you know what,
do
I've
the work of ministry.
Yeah, exactly. You know, we've got a ministry here that we look into partnership with. We've stepped in, approached it a couple of times, and it's to single moms.
Yeah,
you know?
love it.
And it's absolutely incredible ministry. We want to partner with it more. But me? Should I be? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I feel like there's that thing that needs to break in the context of the church as well. You know what I mean? That this is in every member of the church.
Absolutely.
You know, this is the priesthood of believers is not about 10 to 11 on a Sunday morning. The
Yeah.
priesthood of believers is 24/7.
Yeah, yeah.
Ministers,
Yeah.
empowered and equipped by God to
Yeah.
get into community.
Yeah.
And if you've got a heart for something, whether it be single moms, whatever it
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
then start to engage and come back to us
Yeah.
and let's have a look at it and let's see if we can back it under
Yeah,
God. But you are
absolutely.
leading it and driving it.
Absolutely.
And I don't
Absolutely.
think we see that enough.
No.
Because I get that question, what are we doing about this? And
Yeah.
I'm like,
What do you do? Yeah.
there better be a mouse in your pocket, bro. Who are you talking about? Who's the we talking about here? Yeah,
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? It's like,
absolutely.
what are we actually doing?
Yeah, yeah. And
You
to
know?
add to that, like yes, discover what is that passion, what is that desire in your heart. Start to exercise it out. Come, share with your leaders. And then one of the privileges of leadership is to be like, hey, wait a minute, you've got a passion for single moms. So and so has also got a passion for single moms. Let me connect the both of you,
exactly.
and then let's see what we can do as a leadership team, not only to resource you financially potentially, but to help you with skills, to help equip you for the work of ministry.
Yeah.
That's what
and help you gather a team from within the church.
That's what the leaders are called to do, not to go out and do everything, but to help make those cool connections, blow wind in your sails, and get you to do the things that God has put on your heart to do.
Too often the church is like a football game, buddy. 22 people on the field who desperately need some rest. 22,000 people in the stands who desperately need some exercise.
There you go. I love that.
We've got to figure out a way. I mean, especially in these times. And I loved what
Yeah.
you said earlier about, we feel like this COVID and some of this has exposed some of our weaknesses. And
Yeah.
if there's a weakness, I think that's it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That we've
Yeah.
left it up to 22 exhausted
Yeah.
men to get the game done.
Amen.
And actually, there's 22,000 people sitting in the. We've got to figure out a way to get people off the grandstand into the game.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And when we see that, I believe the church will start to make a difference in this nation on every issue.
I agree.
On every issue.
I agree.
But I can't.
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah.
Even my eldership, I've got some horsepower and some gunpowder on my eldership.
Yeah.
Still not going to do it.
So true.
We need to get everybody engaged and
So
going
true.
forward. Thanks, Stevie.
You're welcome, T.
Appreciate it, man. This was a heartfelt conversation, and there are moments of vulnerability in ministry. Just sometimes I don't think people see that because they see us in the pulpit, they see us preaching, and listen, you can have gone through deep heartbreak on Saturday night. What are you going to do? You got to get up on Sunday morning and preach with faith.
Exactly.
But that's not who I am.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? That's me delivering what I believe under God.
Yeah.
And so there's faith, there's stirring, there's passion.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But actually there's this tension of we carry people in our hearts.
Yeah.
We carry the church in our heart. We carry the will and the ways of God in our
Yeah.
hearts. And we absolutely are all
Yeah.
doing our best.
Yeah.
Not trying to be a jerk to anybody, but
Yeah.
just saying, man, this is what we believe the will of God is. We have to go for it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Thanks, my buddy.
Thanks, T.
Appreciate you deeply, eh?
Yeah,
Thanks,
great.
everybody. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share this video if you think it's going to be helpful for somebody, and leave a comment or a question. And great to see you. Let's talk soon.